Ventura Airport Authority meeting to order, please. Could we stand and we'll do a Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could we have a roll call, please?
For Camarillo Airport Authority, Supervisor Long.
Here.
Supervisor Zaragoza. Councilmember Molche.
Present.
Councilmember Santangelo.
Here.
Bill Thomas.
Here.
Camarillo has a quorum. For Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long. Supervisor Zaragoza. Mayor Flynn.
Here.
Councilmember Perello. Walter Calhoun. Eugene Fussell.
Here.
Oxnard has a quorum.
Thank you. Could we have an approval of minutes for the Camarillo side, please?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
One abstention.
One abstention.
And for, oh, yes, sir.
Camarillo.
Yes, I'm sorry, I lost. And for Oxnard?
Move to accept.
Okay, get the first and
Do you have a second?
a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
Got one abstention, and so we're approved.
Thank you. Item number 4 is the public comment period. If anyone would like to speak, please put your card in now. We have several agenda items. If you wish to speak on the agenda items, then hold your, but I still need a card. So if anybody would like to speak on an agenda item, please bring that forward. But for the public comment for non-agenda items, at the end of this period, if I don't have a card, then we'll have to defer it. I do have one card, let's see. Mark, is that for us number? Do you want it during this period?
It's not directly on number 7, it's kind of general, so.
Okay.
I do have a comment on number 7.
I'll call you back up for 7 for that part of it, but if you want to do anything else now?
Just very brief. My name's Mark Sullivan. I've been a renter at the Camarillo Airport and at the Oxnard Airport for 30-something years now. In as many years I've been there, there are probably, every person in this room has a different opinion on exactly what the relationship is of the Airport Advisory Commission and the Board of Supervisors and to the Airport Authority. I decided I'd do a little research on it. I know you all are aware of this, but we've got a really strange situation, I think, when we've got clear-cut ordinance, and if anybody has not looked at it, the 1980 ordinance, I've put my glasses on to give you the number, it's ordinance number 3480, contains the provision from the Board of Supervisors, the policy statement on what the Advisory Commission was supposed to be. The Advisory Commission was clearly supposed to be the channel of input for citizens to the Board of Supervisors. We all know that over time what's happened is the Airport Authority has become, I don't want to call it an appellate authority, but it's become like an intermediate authority, so the Advisory Commission's recommendations, the like, flow through the Airport Authority. And this is surmise. I haven't researched it, but I assume that came from the fact that if the issue was one that was within the broad scope of the Joint Powers Agreement, which is the broad scope of the Airport Authority's jurisdiction, naturally it should go through the Airport Authority. I have no problem whatsoever with having the Airport Advisory Commission's recommendations go to the Airport Authority to get your input, even on matters that are outside the scope of the Joint Powers Agreement. But I think somewhere that should be stated expressly. Right now we have documents that clearly do not state what the relationship is between the two organizations. That becomes very important because I'm going to address the bylaws. My concern with the bylaws is the bylaws very narrowly circumscribe or describe the jurisdiction of the Airport Authority, which is fine. It's following the Joint Powers Agreement. However, that is a problem if the Airport Advisory Commission is deemed to be a subordinate body reporting to the Airport Authority, because it unnecessarily, narrows the citizen input to the board, which is clearly the intent in the ordinance that set up the Advisory Commission. Long and short of it, I would urge the authority to perhaps have a joint meeting with the commission and work out something for the Board of Supervisors to clearly delineate what the relationship between the two entities should be, because I can't find it in writing anywhere. And if I'm missing it, please educate me. I'd like to review it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other cards for public comment, I'd like to go to the presentation 5 Alpha, please, from the Sheriff Office Aviation Unit.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we had asked the Sheriff's Department to be here tonight to give a presentation to you folks and to the audience as to what the Black Hawk operations will look like when they come in for the arrival of their aircraft into their new operation there. So, and that's what they're here for tonight. So,
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question? So this is just an information, there's no action being taken today?
that's correct.
Thank you.
Last time we had
Good evening. Alex Keller, pilot at the Ventura County Aviation Unit. We put together a PowerPoint presentation just to go over the difference of operations from when we purchased from when the Firehawks become operational to what we're doing now. So I'll go through this for you. So currently, we've got the Bell Huey, and we've purchased 3 HH-60L Blackhawks. 2 of them will be converted into Firehawks. Picture profiles here. So a little bit about the HH-60L Firehawk. It's a Type 1 twin-engine aircraft. It's approved for medical rescue, SAR, and firefighting operations. They will have a 1,000-gallon water tank. They are high-performance aircraft. They're proven in their performance with the military. Our neighboring agencies currently fly these aircraft, and they have an excellent safety record. A little bit about the Bell Huey. It's a Type 2 twin and single-engine aircraft, approved for doing medical rescue, search and rescue, and law enforcement missions, as well as firefighting. It's also a high-performance aircraft, and it as well has a proven performance in the commercial service as well as the military. It also has an excellent safety record. So a little bit about the dimensions of these aircraft, just to give you an idea of how much larger the Firehawk will be. If you look at the top depiction here, you've got the total length of the Huey at 57 feet 3 inches, roughly. And there are 2 blades, main rotor blades on top there. With the Blackhawk, if you look at the bottom of the depiction there, the overall length is roughly 64 feet 10 inches, so approximately 7 feet longer than the Hueys. The big difference here with the Blackhawks is it's got 4 main rotor blades. So as the aircraft sits on the ground, the blades won't line up with the fuselage, so they take up ultimately 53 feet in either direction. So we've pulled the military data for both these aircraft, as they were all originally military aircraft. They did a lot of great research for the people using them. So this is the sound charts for the aircraft for approach and takeoff. On the left, you've got the Huey chart, and on the right, you've got the Blackhawk chart. So if you go down and you look at the takeoff and approach numbers, which are kind of in the right-hand side of both those charts, across the board, the Blackhawk charts are approximately 1 decibel lower than the Huey. So there's a common misnomer that these Blackhawk aircraft will be louder because they're larger aircraft. However, they're in fact quieter than the current aircraft we're flying. This is a depiction of our current hangar. Right there in the middle, that's hangar 3. On the left side of the picture, which is the west end, that's our current ramp that we operate out of. And on the right side, which is the east side of the hangar, that's the ramp that we will be utilizing for maintenance actions on the new aircraft and our current aircraft coming in. So just to be clear, that right side or the east side, which is closest to the cafe, That will be used for maintenance operations, which is working on the aircraft outside, doing ground runs, and that will be it. On the left side or the west side of the hangar, that will be our approach and departure path, which we've been using for the last 30-plus years. Absolutely.
As you're talking about the maintenance, at any time, would you have the motors running, blades going, full operation, just sitting on the ground?
Yes.
Okay. And is that noise louder than what was there currently?
With regard to the vendor that's there right now?
Yes.
I couldn't tell you. I wasn't really out there listening to all the aircraft that he was working on, but I believe he's worked on everything from turbine prop aircraft down to piston engine aircraft, so the sound levels would have to be measured
Okay.
in that sense.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Did you say it was 1 decibel quieter than the current aircraft?
Yeah, so if we go back here, so we'll just take a look at that top line there. So you've got on the left-hand chart the Huey, so takeoff decibels is 92.5, and if you just go over to the right chart, same area there, it's 91.4 for the Blackhawk. So the Blackhawk is 1 decibel quieter than the Huey on all ranges here on the chart.
So Alex, they're going to be performing the same maintenance they did with the other aircraft then?
The same maintenance as respect to what?
To the current helicopter?
So the Blackhawks have maintenance that have to be done. The schedule of the maintenance is a different schedule than the Bell aircraft because it's a different manufacturer.
But at the same location?
So the east side, if we move forward here, the east side or the right side of the ramp, that is going to be our maintenance ramp. So our Hueys, as well as our Blackhawks, as well as our Bell 206 Long Ranger, will be maintained on that side of the ramp to keep it separate from our operational side, which will be for ready aircraft, correct?
All right.
Yeah.
And
Just-
and clarification, on the left-hand side is where the maintenance used to be.
Correct, right? The way as we have it right now, whenever we have to do maintenance run-ups, which is typically once during every maintenance interval, you need to wash the engines and run the aircraft up to dry the engines out. We pull it straight out of the maintenance bay where you can actually see the little helicopter there, and we run it. The problem with this is when we get a dispatch as we're doing that, it creates a hazard because obviously you've got blades running and you're having to pull out the ready aircraft, past the aircraft and over to the takeoff pad, which should be further north of there. So we're going to separate those two operations in the thought of being a little bit safer and a little bit more organized.
Perello?
You mentioned the Huey numbers on the noise, and you also mentioned Huey has 1 engine and 2 engines. Those numbers are for 2 engine or 1 engine?
This is for the 2-engine Huey.
Is that the louder of the 2?
That is the louder of the
Thank
two, yes, sir.
Yeah, the only comment, go back to right now when helicopters are out on the ramp, so you can see how much further away that is from where the maintenance is. There's one helicopter out on the ramp closest to the Foxtrot. No, not your facility, right there, yeah. If you spend 10, 15 minutes with the rotors turning, you have a hard time talking in the waypoint, just so you know.
Okay.
And that's further away than where you got the maintenance. So I recognize that it's going to be maintenance turns only, but that could end up being an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, when you operate in the airport environment, you end up running aircraft, and those usually have noise associated with them. With regard just to your question about the 212, for helicopters, what generates noise actually is the main rotor system, and the tail rotor system is typically the major noise contributor to aircraft flying over. So it's the slapping of the blade. So with the newer aircraft, multi-bladed helicopters, they kind of shorten the main rotor blades, and that's usually what gets rid of some of those noises. It's generally not associated with the engines when you're flying, of course.
Chair, may I ask this question? What time of day, what days and what times on those respective days would you likely be performing maintenance?
That's a loaded question, just because if we're out in the middle of the night working an incident such as the Thomas fire and we have an aircraft that has a maintenance issue, Depending on the need of the incident, we might call in mechanics at 2 in the morning to fix a problem so we can get that aircraft back to the emergency. But on a regular, normal basis, the maintenance is performed between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m.
On weekdays or all 7 days?
Weekdays currently.
Just weekdays, so they don't perform maintenance on weekends?
Well, there's a possibility
Regular
of that
maintenance.
again if something.
Well, but just regular maintenance?
Currently, it's Monday through Friday, yes, sir.
Okay.
And again, the run-ups are not a daily event. Run-ups are done, for example, we do a 25-hour inspection right now on our Hueys. We might take, depending on our call volume, anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks to run through those 25 hours. And after that 6-week period of time or 2-week period of time is up, they'll perform maintenance. And then, for example, tomorrow morning, we're going to run the aircraft for approximately 5 minutes, and that will be the end of the run-up for the next 2 to 6 weeks on that aircraft. Ready? Next slide?
Yep, sure.
Okay, moving forward. So this is a side profile of our takeoff and departure plan for the Firehawk helicopter. As you can see there, we're going to be going vertically up from the ground, approximately 70 feet, and then on course with what we're currently doing, leaving to the northwest, depending on the winds, or potentially the south, also depending on the winds. Like many aircraft that you can imagine, we like to take off into the wind, so we try to designate a departure path that will allow us to not overfly any aircraft or buildings on leaving and coming back in for landing. A little bit about downwash. I know downwash, there's been some questions about downwash. The Black Hawk helicopter does have more downwash than the Huey, and we'll talk about it a little bit here for you. So the Black Hawk helicopter puts out approximately 1.5 times the downwash of the Huey. Downwash is directly affected by blade loading and how heavy the aircraft is during takeoff and landing. Our planned operating weight of the Black Hawk or Firehawk helicopter is going to be approximately 5,000 pounds below maximum gross weight on takeoff and potentially up to 7,000 pounds below maximum gross weight when returning to base after the mission. This will aid in minimizing the downwash during the vertical takeoff and landing described earlier. During multiple test takeoffs and landings performed by one of our Blackhawks and LA County's Firehawk, we determined that the downwash effect while landing on our paved concrete pad in a vertical fashion proved to be negligible difference when compared to the Huey.
Can you please define what downwash is?
Downwash, as a rotor turns, it's sucking in air from above the helicopter and pushing it down. So that downwash, if you think of a plane, if you know what prop wash is, the props on a plane turn, if you stand behind them, your hair starts blowing. So downwash is the same thing, but in a vertical fashion because our prop is facing up and down.
Okay, question aligned with that. You mentioned that it would be possibly 1.5 times. How close to proximity is this airport cafe if these planes are going to be running and there's downwash? Is there any concern about the people eating outside?
No, there is
Okay,
not.
thank you.
Yeah, downwash gets dramatically worse as you apply power to take off. So on a ground run, you're flat pitch with no sort of angle of attack on the blade, so it's not actually creating very much downwash on the ground. It's just when you're taking off and you apply power to the aircraft is when that downwash becomes in effect.
Thank you.
Moving forward. Questions?
So, go ahead.
The question is, you say the decibels are just 1 decibel difference, and then the negligence, what was the downwash was minimal compared to the current aircraft.
Yeah, the effect of the downwash when landing on a ramp. So if we go back here, and you can see from up here, we've got about 130 feet by, I'd be guessing here, I forgot the measurements, but let's say 500 feet here of paved concrete pad. So when we're taking off with the Huey in the middle of that pad there, you're not really feeling any sort of downwash if you're outside of the pad. With the Blackhawk, it wasn't so bad that we felt that it created any sort of extra hazard compared to the Huey.
It's negligible, okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Will your flight path on especially the northwest be a steeper climb than the current Hueys with the Blackhawks?
Yeah, so right now with the Hueys, we kind of take off just in a sloping fashion as we lift off. With the Blackhawks, we plan to go vertically approximately 70 feet here, if you look at the side profile. And once we're up 70 feet high, we'll depart further or to the northwest or to the south. That way, we'll minimize any sort of downwash effect on anything we fly over as we're departing the area.
So on those profiles that LA and Santa Barbara, whoever your other Firehawk folks were, is that the profile and the weights that you plan on using in that profile practice?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Supervisor?
Okay, just to clarify, because I know I have a lot of people asking questions. So on the right-hand side of the hangar is maintenance only? There will never be any takeoffs? Or would you be coming back to us if you decide to change this model for takeoffs and landings?
Currently, there are no plans for any takeoffs or landing, no.
So you're going to somehow get the helicopter on the other side before taking off?
Well, there's two doors, so there's major bay doors here and here. There's no plan to ever take off or land from here unless, for example, this whole concrete area disappeared for some reason.
Okay,
Let me speak to that real quick.
thank you.
So on the hangar on the right-hand side, the side we don't have right now that we'll be getting, all our broken aircraft or working on aircraft are going to be there. All our mission-ready aircraft will be kept on the other side.
Okay. And then also the flight path does not go over the cafe, correct?
It does not.
Okay.
Correct.
So then the downdraft, you said? What was it?
Downwash?
Downwash. I knew I had the wrong word. The downwash for takeoffs and are not going to be as close as people perceive to the
No,
restaurant.
all that will take place currently where it is. And another point to make, about 15% of our flights are fire flights right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want people to get the idea that every time they see a helicopter now, that's going to be replaced with a Firehawk, because it's not.
Right.
We're still going to be using the Hueys for search and rescue stuff. We're still going to be using Copter 3 for the law enforcement flight. So don't get the impression that every flight you see now is going to be replaced with a Firehawk, because that's not going to be the case.
Okay, thank you. And then also there was a question brought to the Board of Supervisors and to this advisory group as to the tenant that is, their lease is ending. So I believe they had meetings with you and
Yeah, I've
set
met
up?
with him, the sheriff's met with him, I know Mr. Turner's met with him.
Thank you.
He has found another hangar, and he'll be moving out by the end of the month. I spoke with him again today.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
great.
And to your point, you mentioned earlier about the maintenance. So he runs an aircraft repair service that's there, and he is doing maintenance run-ups there but they're on, fixed-wing aircraft, not on helicopters. So it's not like maintenance run-ups is going to be something new to that pad. It's being done. I don't know what the noise difference is, though, between what he's doing and what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not saying that the cafe is saying anything about noise. I mean, part of it, the attraction is being there with the airplanes, and I appreciate it. I would only ask to make sure that we check in with them and work with them as any neighbor would do to make
Yes.
sure that everything is okay.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that update. Any questions on our side? No.
Are these new helicopters, used helicopters? If
They're
used,
they're used military helicopters.
what's the life expectancy on them?
Oh, right now we have a Huey that's going to be turning 50 in October. So as long as we keep them maintained and keep working on them, I mean, they could be that same life expectancy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Susan.
You sort of answered one of my questions, and I was going to ask about the use of them. And I'm asking or wanting to know if there's a difference in how they work for medical responses. Is there more room? Are they easier to work in?
So the carrying capacity is much greater. They have more power. But with all that comes higher operating expenses. And that's really what's going to keep us just fiscally using the smallest aircraft we can use to do the job is what we're going to do, just fiscally.
And then I sort of related, is there a difference if you're responding and looking for a landing zone? Is there an advantage to one over the other?
So obviously, any of the smaller aircraft are going to be easier to land. So for instance, right now, like Los Robles Hospital, they're not rated for the Blackhawks to land there. So that is definitely an issue. So that's a very good question.
Thank you.
Are there plans to upgrade Los Robles to handle the?
I hear rumors, so I'm not speaking for them, that they're
No, I'm not
they're
asking.
looking into that, but
Okay.
I don't know that that's going to happen. I know
But-
it's very expensive.
But the county has been in touch with the other receiving medical centers, so they know that
Yeah,
this
so-
is in progress.
Correct. So all the hospitals we've reached out to all of them. For instance, our own sheriff's pad at the East Valley Station will have to be expanded if we land Blackhawks there. So we've notified everybody that we work with that what the requirements would be for a Blackhawk to land there.
Any other questions from,
We're okay.
all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have one speaker card for 5A, Mr. Haskins. Leon? Was this the topic you wanted to ask? Had questions? Okay.
My name is Leon Haskins. I live in Newbury Park, and I've been on this airport since 1980. And before that, I was at Oxnard Airport from the early 70s. But I really have objections to it, to be honest with you, which is not going to last too long, probably. Jorge, can we put back on the one where it has the description with the routes that are going to come in? That one, that's the one. They show it coming in on basically about a 45 from the northwest, and then on a different angle from back here in the back. They've been using that angle for a long time. My hangar is down there where you can see the row right north of them there. That's got a dark line right there in the middle of it. It's where my hangar is. They come down now. They come down and make a swing and circle in and come right straight up that taxiway. Or they come around the building from the other way and straight up that taxiway. I really have doubts that they're really going to remain at doing that. I hate to say that, but I do. But I can feel the prop wash when they go by. I can also feel the sand that blows in my hangar door whenever they go by, because it doesn't get swept every day or anything, and there's always sand and gravel out there. We have to end up watching it on a kind of it chews props up to where they can't be used anymore. But the other thing is, are they going to be running any engines up at all on that east side? If they are, the restaurant's going to be wanting to buy us out. So I can't understand that being there. The west side, it's something that's been there. We've lived with the prop wash and stuff from the old ones. The old ones are supposedly make a lot more noise than the new ones. But I can't see them just using those two routes in and out. They never have, and I don't think they ever will. But that's immaterial. My main part, and the part I would like to end up this with, being we have two supervisors here, is why aren't we building them a location of their own so they'd be by themselves, they wouldn't bother anybody else, and they could have a good facility they could work out of. Right now, the only advantage I can see for them even being there is because they get cheap rent from the airport. And that's the only thing I can find that may end up really is the reason that they want to even stay close. Because if they have a helicopter come down, odds are they're going to get somebody someplace. With that, I'll thank you, and I'll shut up.
Thank you, Leon.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Representing Oxnard, straight up, I don't fly, I don't know that much about airplanes, but the gentleman brought up a question, and I'd like to have an answer. If we have two red lines and it shows the path, and he's indicating, and I don't know if he's accurate, but I have no grounds to say he's not. If we have a line and it says that's supposed to be the path, are there any ramifications if we don't follow the path? Do we know if, is it okay to deviate? I have no idea, but he brings up a good point.
He's operating in controlled airspace, so there's deviations if he breaks away from the clearances he has to operate from the tower.
What you're talking about the helicopter?
Anybody operating in our airspace,
Okay.
yes. But there's no reason for us to believe he would deviate or they would deviate from what they've told us would be their operating path. We feel very confident that the Sheriff's Department has done an outstanding job in thinking about all of the concerns related to these aircraft, and we feel really good about how that operation will be conducted at our airport.
Okay, thank you. And just one last thing. I think the gentleman brought up a good point. Maybe a site for themselves might, money's always an object, but.
May I come in? I have no reason to disbelieve the gentleman who just got through speaking. I think, being a pilot myself for the last 40, 50 years, we get kind of sloppy sometime. And I think that if they want to be good neighbors, they probably should fly those lines. And I believe they're not flying the lines. I think they're coming down the taxiway like he's described. And what I would do was to admonish the Sheriff's Department and say, okay, guys, you want to be good neighbors, so fly where you say you're going to fly.
And it may be that they're changing that path for these type helicopters. Is that the case? I'm still the new guy here, so.
So currently, do you mind if I get the pointer from you one more time? So we do understand that we have neighbors close by, and I'll apologize because I do understand that on occasions we have caused downwash there. I do know that. However, at the same time, we take great care in trying to mitigate that by checking to see if there's any hangar doors open when we come into land. So what we currently fight with the Hueys and with really any aircraft with a one engine is you've got this diagram that if you lose an engine, you're kind of out of luck. So with one engine, whenever we can, we try to fly over something that if we lose the engine, we can have a survivable crash that we won't hurt anyone else in the process. So with that being said, with the Hueys, if we see that these doors are closed and there's aircraft over here with any people by them or just in general, we currently will come in this way for that reason, only on landing. On takeoff, typically we take off over this building here and then turn on course with the current aircraft. If we have to, we'll go this way, but generally speaking, we come over here and then we turn over trying to use the roads if we can. With the Firehawks, we'll have two engines, so having that capability of the second engine will affect ultimately, and the more downwash will affect which way we come in, which there's no intention with the Firehawks to come down this ramp right here. We're going to be landing in this direction, potentially in this direction, and also potentially from this way, depending on what the winds and what the traffic is doing. As Kip had pointed out, sometimes we're faced on short final aircraft that are taxiing, people that are over the ramp, people that are over here, any sort of hazards that we have to fly around. So there are occasions where we don't come in a standard kind of capacity. But on a normal day with no issues, we certainly intend to limit any sort of downwash with those aircraft. And with the power those aircraft have on takeoff as well, we'll be able to take off in a much more vertical fashion, much quicker to get out of the area so we're not causing any sort of downwash.
Yeah. Alex, I know that as public officials and safety officials that the Sheriff Department wants to be good neighbors with the rest of the folks there at the airport.
Yes.
And I'm sure that the sheriff wants that,
Yeah, we do. We're here to help out, and we want to do everything we can to not affect your operation. And if that ever does happen, I'll come help you sweep out your hangar, but I'll try to make sure it doesn't. I've done that before in my career.
And it's really, really important when something happens, the freeway or something, or we have a fire, that we have you guys ready and available to help us out. And we appreciate that tremendously.
Yeah, not a problem.
And maybe if you could follow up with him afterwards, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
And while I'm getting Mr. Hall's card, you may as well stay up there. While you're walking back down, one of the things that I was thinking is for the airport that I think that we need to have a little bit more diligent sweeper operation especially in the area of the wash rack and in the area in front of those hangars, because that ends up getting quite dusty, and if the Blackhawk leaves after a weekend of Santa Ana's, it could be pretty dusty. So that's one of those things that we probably need to keep an eye on. Mr. Hall.
Thank you. My name is Norman Hall. I'm a former law enforcement officer myself. I have helicopter time. I have 10,000 hours of flight time, and my hangar is in the first row of the backside off of the, right there. That's my hangar. I get rotor wash from the Hueys down in my hangar, clear down there from where they come now. And I'm concerned about any run-ups in the area where Mr. Fleck has been. And I certainly don't think that that would be great. I would not like that. And I don't want any overflights, of course, with the Blackhawks. Now, I support our local law enforcement, always have. I have friends that fly there that are pilots. But I think the county has been negligent in helping the sheriffs and the fire department locate these aircraft. I would proffer that the corner down on Las Posas and Pleasant Valley is the place they should locate. I think you could get grants to do that. That's a school district property that's within the county, could be worked out. You could have everything right there and new buildings and have all their equipment under cover and have plenty of pad room. And I think they really should take a look at it. I've known Leon forever, seems like. He and I are old timers out there. I've been there since '99. And I really think that that should be the way it goes. I am not very happy with the way that Mr. Fleck was treated. I think it was underhanded. I think it was dirty pool, if you will, the way he was treated and didn't know what was going on. And I think there should be a change. And I would encourage the thought to relocate the sheriff's division down there. I think it would be to their advantage. They would like it better, and it would not create the issues we have now on the airport with the helicopters, and we know we need those badly. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just address the need for a new hangar for our fire and sheriffs, they would love a new one. They would love it built. It is a capital expense, something that the county is continually looking at right now. And we appreciate the working with our community for this airport, for the demands, and to make sure that our community is safe, because that's really what we need to do. But there is a general plan, a strategy of what we can do. So this is for the time being until something like that can be built. And I do want to let you know that that is on our radar. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I know that the gentleman here today will be bringing back those comments you said, because they do want to be good neighbors. And just want to appreciate your words. Thank you.
And also want to thank you for input, and I'm sure staff heard your recommendations and your input.
Mr. Chairman, a brief comment, if I may. Well, I've been around forever also, and I was involved in, I'm going to make this short and sweet, there's a lot of good input tonight about this subject. Almost 2 years ago, I suppose, there was a resiting project that took place on the sheriff's hangar on both sides of it, because they were looking pretty scroungy at the time. I watched them come and go over the years and was amazed at the way they delicately handled these machines and brought them in the land. I thought, well, there's got to be a ton of abuses that go on, and I'm a pilot and all that.
of their stuff. I said, it seems like they manage it. Well, lo and behold, so I get over there and we have a little pep talk, nothing very complicated. And I said, well, we're going to have times when we have to have everybody out of the way. They, well, just let us know when that is. We had a coordination meeting, and lo and behold, before one of their scheduled flights came in, we moved the man lifts and all the people off the ramp without a problem. They came in, bam. They kept their helicopters away from our work, by the way, way away from the work, because we had paneling, sided, stacked, etc. They cooperated in every regard throughout the entire process. On the more dangerous side, where they depart and leave, on the west side. And I was absolutely amazed at the pinpoint accuracy that they could spot these large helicopters and cooperate with everybody. Then in the meantime, if everyone doesn't know this, I think it's kind of interesting, there was an upholstery shop that's right there next to the gate, and they're carrying stuff in, insulation, and wandering around, with a chocolate shake. And then there was also the skydiving thing was going on. And that 182 is coming in, dropping people off. They're wandering around the ramp with us. And these guys never lost their patience. They'd always go out and say, hey, take your chute, go around the corner. You don't belong here. And they just did an unbelievable job at coordinating the whole exercise. To my total mystification, we never had a problem, never had an incident. So the bottom line is, boy, if they can handle the situation the way it was, the additional flights with the Blackhawks, I cannot see them. It cannot be an issue whatsoever. At least, now I'm sure there's tail wash down there. That's going to happen with the winds in the direction they come and go. But they've never had a major incident there. I don't know how many years. So that certainly is proof in the pudding for me. And although as a tail end remark, if we ever did have the money, they'd need a big new facility to handle their future needs as well.
And you've worked with the airports for how many years now? You? 50 years?
Yeah, that's kind of personal, isn't it?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or requests from the authority? Okay. Let's move on to new business then. John, do you want to, I'm sorry, do you?
Okay, then, so we have the Oxnard Airport Authority, so Kemp, are you making that presentation?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Before we do, I'd just like to say thank you again to Captain Paris and Alex. They put a lot of work into this presentation and to making sure that we were communicating, or they were communicating for us, the type of operation they plan to run with those helicopters, and that was very appreciated, so thank you.
Yeah, and this is receiving finally presentation of the Oxnard Airport runway improvement.
Yes. In the April meeting, we had asked for, the board had asked, or the authority had asked several questions in relation to the Oxnard upcoming runway project. We thought they were very good questions, and we took that back to our engineers, and we asked them to be here tonight to give an informational presentation about that runway project, to talk about how we got to the point where we are today, and then how we have shifted from a rehabilitation project for the runway to a reconstruction project. And Jeff and Eduardo from Mead and Hunt are here to give a presentation for that, for you tonight, and to answer any questions, because they are the engineers that are working on that for us, and they're the source that you would ask those questions that you might have going forward for that. So if we could just turn it over to Mead and Hunt, that'd be great.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Leonard from Mead and Hunt. And no problem, Jorge. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to present our preliminary evaluation to the authority of our Oxnard Airport Runway Pavement Improvement Project. The purpose of the presentation is to discuss our preliminary evaluation and to listen to some of the questions and concerns you may have, as well as to develop a path to achieve the goal together. A little history about Mead and Hunt. We've worked at the Oxnard Airport for the County of Ventura for over 20 years. Personally, I've worked on the airport projects at Oxnard since 2006, and it's been a pleasure, and I think we've had a great team to fulfill the needs and keep the airport operating in a safe demeanor. A little bit about pavement factors that lead to deterioration. So from the day after that pavement's constructed, it does start to deteriorate immediately. Some of these different factors are the different variables and climate factors and load factors that do lead to that deterioration. One of the main parts of the evaluation that we did find out was that the subgrade of the soils is one of the predominant factors that is leading to the basis of our recommendation today that we'll get into a little more. A little background on the history of the runway pavement at the Oxnard Airport. It's been 27 years since the last structural improvement to the runway, dating back to 1992. In 2003 and 2011, the FAA helped fund seal coat application projects. Because it is a groove surface, the application of the surface treatment was limited to essentially a fog seal type application, which also included crack seal measures, pavement cleaning, followed by, at the end, pavement marking improvements. As part of the FAA requirements for grant assurances, they do require periodic inspections of the pavement surfaces, followed by what they refer to as an airport pavement management system study. We performed these studies in 2012 and 2016. And the purpose of the study is not only to do a visual inspection of the runway surface, but also to track the history on how it's wearing, if it's wearing faster, shorter, the types of wears that you might expect in an environment like Ventura County, and also to classify a pavement classification index, or PCI. And the 55 to 70 was the latest rating, which is a fair condition based on standard engineering practices and the FAA variables from 0, which is basically failed and poor, to 100, which would be a brand new type of pavement. The overall objective of evaluating the history of it, evaluating the current conditions, is to keep the runway in a safe operating condition. Obviously, with planes taking off, we want to make sure that there aren't pieces of the pavement coming off. We want to make sure that we're ahead of the ball before the pavement starts to fail to a point that it's not a safe and usable pavement.
Jeff, we got a question.
You made a comment, the type of wear one might expect in Ventura County. Can you give me a description of what you mean?
Based on the temperatures, in Ventura County, it's a fairly stable type temperature. The climate doesn't get really, really hot, then really, really cold. So you don't have the huge temperature variations. You're not in a freeze-thaw area. Different, just environmental considerations of that such.
Thank you.
So Jeff, the PCI back in 12-16 was 55 to 70. What would the PCI be now? Based on the current condition, it'd probably be at the low end of fair. Okay.
So there's a lot of different guidance and updates to the advisory circulars that the FAA uses on how to measure those. Mm-hmm. In the last, I believe it's about 2 years, it's more of a calculated more than just a visual inspection. But based on the current condition, I would put it more in the 55 at the low end of the fair condition.
And that then it has a lot to do with the soil, as you mentioned initially, right?
The PCI is a visual inspection only.
Visual inspection, okay.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm just curious. So the pavement that we're referring to, since its inception, is what is the pavement? Is that like a little bit of asphalt, or is there concrete in there? What is that? At the inception point.
You mean from the time it was
when it was originally installed?
Yes. When it was originally constructed, it was asphalt concrete surface.
Asphalt concrete surface.
Correct.
And it was a combination of both?
Asphalt surface.
It's an asphalt surface, no concrete whatsoever?
No.
And
no Portland cement concrete. So no Portland cement concrete, just asphalt concrete. Asphalt, hot mix asphalt, yes.
Asphalted concrete. And the entire surface or the entire construction was the same material?
So right now, the entire existing surface is asphalt. The depth of the existing asphalt pavement ranges from about 2.5 to 3 inches up to 6 inches. Below that, there is a section of base. I believe that varies from 18 to 22.5 inches.
Okay.
And then below that is the native subgrade type materials. And over the time, when you don't have, or when you have the type of materials we do, the water eventually starts to intermix with that underlying, what used to be brand-new base 27 years ago. It starts to get a little contaminated as it starts to blend with the below. But yeah, to answer your initial question, the entire surface is asphalt.
Okay, and that's when those chunks start falling off of it, is that correct?
Yeah, and you can actually, so in the middle picture, one example of how it is starting to wear and deteriorate. In 2011, we follow as part of the grant assurances from the FAA, when we get their money for the majority of these projects, we have to follow the protocols, and one of them is we have to go in there and remove markings to a certain percentage. And because of groove surface, it takes very specialized equipment and obviously very high production rates in order to do that. And in that project, and also the buildup of rubber, which is a little different than your typical highway situation. During that time, as we're trying to remove the markings and remove the rubber, we actually had to scale back on it because we started pulling off chunks from the grooves just due to the deterioration rate. In the graphics, the pictures shown on the left and the right up there, you can kind of see some of the pieces start coming off. And in order to, so basically you wanted to clean the surface, get that rubber off, so when we do put a surface treatment on, we do have a nice, strong, tight bond to that and obviously preserve it longer.
Go ahead.
Continue?
Yes.
Thank you. So part of the Oxnard runway improvement discussion timeline, so we have been talking about this with the FAA for some time, just due to the age of the pavement. And we included it in the airport capital improvement program in 2017 and 2018. And then last June, we started preparing the contract for the preliminary design so we could further develop early on to find out what really is going on with the runway, not only from so that the county knows what to expect, but also so the FAA knows what to expect financially and scale-wise of the project. And then just this past February is when we finished the draft preliminary pavement design options that we'll talk about here shortly. And then through that time is when we had those discussions with the county as well as with the FAA staff for their review input and ultimately concurrence. So this slide really details the meat of our evaluation. So beginning with the geotech, we know that this is a single runway airport, and closing a runway, doing any type of project, even the seal coats, I remember back in 2011, those were big deals to close the runway for any period of time. But obviously the livelihood, but on the same note, we want to make sure that the runway is always in safe operating condition. So we started out scoping this job with, we have 40 borings for the project. There's 30 borings on the runway that go down to 10 feet to get a very clear picture of what's going on underneath the surface. And then each of the connector taxiways has an additional 2 borings for a total of 40. What we found in the borings was variable depths of the asphalt surface that I said, varying from a couple inches up to 6. The aggregate base section, which is actually in pretty good condition, and then the subsurface material. There was quite a bit of variability with what you would expect here, again, for the region, some silty sands, some silty clays, but the unexpected piece that we did find was the high moisture content of those underlying materials. And the high moisture content is what's making them unstable, almost like a mattress type or jello type surface as they start to move and interact. And so,
can I ask, is that a function of the water table, low water table, or I mean the high water table?
yes, sir, that is a factor of the water table, the amount of rain, just from the water coming in on the sides of the pavement going down, the water table coming up. So yeah, it's multiple factors, but that's predominantly one of the main.
Can I ask a fundamental question? I always thought that reconstruction would cost more than rehabilitation. Can you tell me the difference as a layman? I don't understand.
Absolutely. So remember how I said the base was actually pretty good? And it's quite a bit of base, more than we actually would have expected, 18 to, I believe, 22.5 inches. So when we were initially looking at the options, the goal was the rehabilitation option where we could remove the asphalt surface and basically add a little more base and build up and pave on top. So to answer the question that you had, sir, the rehabilitation means that you're not going down and fixing the subgrade. And due to the low values of the underlying material, without fixing them, it took more base to build it up. And so basically what it turns out to is it's cheaper to chemically stabilize the underlying soft material and get a solid working platform, so then we can build up rather than add more base and raise the runway surface. So it's not only the direct cost of the pavement for that, but as we start changing the runway elevation and increasing the height, it exacerbates the cost for adjustments to the runway edge lighting, as well as in the picture here, that's part of the MELS F approach lighting system. If that changes by more than a few inches, the FAA requires new approaches, new flight checks, and it really, not only, the cost isn't as much of an implication as the timeline for them to come up with the new approaches, which can take multiple years. Did I answer that question?
Doc, is that okay?
I'm still confused. In other words, basically what you're saying is just to go ahead and reconstruct the thing and be cheaper than to try to fix it?
It is. Yeah,
Okay.
you're correct. And because we were beginning or hoping to go down the rehabilitation road, we did want to illustrate that cost for that reason, to show that with the amount of base we'd have to add, which not only adds extra wear and tear on the surrounding roads and timeline, to do a chemical treatment process, you're bringing in minimal equipment, fixing everything on site, and trying to keep as much material on site from hauling it off.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kelly.
If we choose option 2, which is a reconstruction, what will the lifetime of that airstrip be?
So the pavement lifetime following this design criteria is 20 years.
Okay, so currently we have been, it's 27 years is what we've had. So the prevention side of making sure we repave and so forth, could we actually get longer than 20 years? Or is it the materials that are today didn't last as long as they did last long time ago? What's the deal?
So that's a good question. It is. Actually, we see some of the materials, like concrete materials back from World War II, those have an infinite life cycle, I see. But even though it's a 20-year design life, if with proper maintenance, with following the seal coats, so the proper maintenance would be a seal coat 3 to 5 years after. Once you hit that 10 to 12-year mark, doing like a mill and fill type project, which is removing just the surface course, that there again might be wearing or having cracks that allow water in, putting a new surface course on, or an overlay type project, and you can definitely see longer than 20 years.
And
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
The FAA design software is what establishes a 20-year pavement design.
Okay, and then also the rehabilitation wouldn't last as long.
That's correct. So a rehabilitation option is only a 10-year design.
Correct. Okay, and I wanted to make sure people knew that, because shutting down an airport is critical to all of us, and we want to do that as little as possible.
Absolutely. Just to further expand on, I know, like I said, it's 12 weeks. That's a long time, but what we're really trying to do is get the solid platform underneath. So the chemical treatment that we're looking at, it's called lime treating or cement treating, depending on the exact materials that we find after grading. And what it prepares is a foundation that's extremely hard, that doesn't allow that water from the water table to penetrate through the bottom. The other factor that these costs do include, it's called an under drain system, which are basically 6-inch pipes that go down the entire edge of the pavement. So any water coming in from the side hits those pipes before it goes into that sub-pavement structure. And what that will do is the main thing we want to do is keep the water out from the pavement, because that's really what's causing the issues right now. And so when we do have those projects in the future, we're not closing the runway for 12 weeks. We're doing quick mill and fill projects. One other airport up the road that is similar, and I believe Jorge mentioned it before too, is like Santa Barbara. They have commercial service. They physically cannot shut down the runway. They do mill and fill projects on a nightly closure. Whatever they take out that night, they pave that back that night, and they just kind of work down the path because they have the good solid foundation underneath. And it really does allow expedited construction.
So before we do that, is that what we're going to do here, staff, or are we going to use Camarillo, or how are we going to during the construction?
We are going to do a lot of messaging and pre-coordination as much as possible to try to carry traffic over to Camarillo during this project, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And then there may be other traffic that needs other uses outside.
So
of
Camarillo's
that.
going to be available during the,
Oh, for sure, yes.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, when were these borings taken?
These borings were
recall?
taken in October of 2018.